You think you can just walk into my dojo? The hand wrapped around her throat at exactly 7:43 p.m., thick fingers pressing against her windpipe with practiced precision. Sarah Miller kept her eyes steady, watching the reflection in the mirror behind her attacker. 3 men circling, 47 witnesses frozen in place. The security camera in the corner blinked red. "Evidence secured," she whispered, just loud enough for the wire taped beneath her sports bra to catch every word. Nathan Brennan's grip tightened. 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle and rage, the vice president of operations at DataVault Corporation had transformed the company wellness center into his personal kingdom. His breath smelled of protein shakes and arrogance as he leaned closer. "You're about to learn what happens to data analysts who don't know their place." The countdown had begun. 72 hours until the Securities and Exchange Commission received everything. 72 hours until the biggest corporate fraud case in Seattle exploded across every newsroom in America. 72 hours until Nathan Brennan discovered that the quiet girl from the 3rd floor wasn't quite what she seemed. Sarah had joined DataVault's Judo program 6 weeks ago, claiming she needed exercise to combat the stress of staring at spreadsheets all day. Her employee file showed her as Sarah Miller, 32, single, unremarkable. 5'6", 130 pounds, psychology degree from State, hired 18 months ago for her analytical skills and ability to spot patterns in data. What the file didn't show were the 7 years she'd spent after college, the training that had nothing to do with Microsoft Excel, or the real reason she'd walked through DataVault's doors. The dojo occupied the entire 14th floor of the DataVault building, a $28 million employee wellness initiative that had somehow passed the board's approval despite the company's recent layoffs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Elliott Bay, the late evening sun painting the water gold. The mats were pristine white, imported from Japan at $15,000 per section. The walls displayed certificates and trophies, most belonging to Nathan himself, documenting his supposed mastery of various martial arts. But Sarah had noticed details others missed. The wear patterns on the mats told stories of violence that went beyond normal training. Dark stains that industrial cleaning couldn't quite remove. The way new employees who joined the program either quit within 2 weeks or emerged with injuries that kept them out of work for days. 23 employees in 18 months, according to the medical records she'd accessed through channels that technically didn't exist. "Jake, Daniel, get her arms," Nathan commanded. His 2 lieutenants moved instantly. Jake Roberts, the sales director with the broken nose and cauliflower ears, grabbed her left wrist. Daniel Carson from procurement took her right, his grip hesitant, apologetic almost. Sarah had studied them both. Jake, 35, divorced twice, had been Nathan's first recruit when the wellness program launched. Daniel, 28, still paid student loans and child support, couldn't afford to lose his job by refusing Nathan's orders. Tom Bradley, the chief of security, stood by the door. 40 years old, former Marine, he should have been stopping this. Instead, he was recording everything on his phone. Not for evidence, but for Nathan's private collection. What Tom didn't know was that his phone had been compromised 3 weeks ago. Every video automatically uploading to a server that would soon become very important to federal prosecutors. The other employees in the class formed a circle, some looking away, others watching with the morbid fascination of people witnessing a car crash. Sarah recognized faces from accounting, marketing, IT. Good people who'd been systematically conditioned to accept this violence as normal, as part of DataVault's competitive culture. "You missed 3 sessions this week," Nathan said, his theatrical voice echoing off the walls. "In my dojo, that's disrespect, and disrespect requires correction." The invoice flashed through Sarah's memory. DV 2847, dated 3 weeks ago. $5,000 per month per employee for premium wellness training, though most employees thought the company covered the full cost. They didn't know about the automatic payroll deductions hidden in their benefits statements, or that 70% of that money never reached any legitimate training expense. They didn't know that Jennifer Hayes, the director of wellness and Nathan's supposed supervisor, had created a financial labyrinth that would make Bernie Madoff proud. If you're witnessing this confrontation and feeling that surge of anger at the injustice, hit that like button and subscribe to see how Sarah turns the tables on these corporate predators. Your support through the thanks button helps us expose more of these hidden stories. And I'm curious, which city are you watching from as this Seattle scandal unfolds? Sarah's breathing remained steady. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. The technique she'd learned not in any corporate wellness program, but in a concrete building in Virginia where failure meant more than losing your job. She felt Jake's fingers dig into her wrist, noticed Daniel's reluctance, cataloged Nathan's positioning. The mirror showed her everything: the emergency exit 20 feet away, the fire extinguisher that could become a weapon, the structural beam that would provide cover if needed. "I had client meetings," Sarah said, playing her role as the overwhelmed analyst. Her voice carried just enough tremor to seem authentic. "The Morrison account required—" Nathan's laugh cut through her words. "The Morrison account? You think spreadsheets matter more than respect?" He nodded to Jake and Daniel. "Hold her steady. Time for today's lesson." This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for. 6 weeks of surveillance, of documenting every transaction, recording every threat, building a case that would stand up in federal court. The FBI had wanted to move earlier, but Sarah had insisted on waiting. She needed Nathan to escalate, needed him to cross the line from simple assault to something that would guarantee serious prison time. And tonight, with 47 witnesses and multiple cameras recording, he was about to give her exactly what she needed. The technique Nathan chose was shihadachi, a chokehold banned in professional competition for its potential to cause permanent damage. As he positioned himself behind her, Sarah caught a glimpse of something else in the mirror. Jennifer Hayes, watching from the observation deck above, her phone out, recording everything. The director of wellness, 45 years old with an MBA from Wharton and a law degree she never mentioned, had positioned herself perfectly to claim plausible deniability. If anything went wrong, she was just documenting a training session for liability purposes. "Everyone pay attention," Nathan announced to the room. "This is what happens when you disrespect the hierarchy." His forearm pressed against Sarah's throat, the classic position for a blood choke that would render her unconscious in seconds if properly applied. But Nathan, for all his bluster, had learned his techniques from YouTube videos and weekend seminars. His positioning was off by 2 inches, his leverage compromised by his need to display dominance rather than efficiency. Sarah had approximately 4 seconds to decide. She could go limp, play the victim, let the assault proceed and add it to the evidence file. Or she could reveal a fraction of what she was capable of and accelerate the timeline. The wire against her ribs captured every word, every breath, every threat. Agent Rivera was listening from a van parked 3 blocks away, probably reaching for his radio, ready to call in backup. But then Nathan made a mistake. "Maybe after this you'll think twice about walking into places you don't belong, little girl." Little girl. The same words her instructor at Quantico had used, right before she'd put him in the hospital during a training exercise that had gone too far. The same words that had echoed through her career, from people who saw her quiet demeanor and average appearance and assumed weakness. The same words that had been spoken by another executive at another company 3 years ago, right before that particular corruption case had ended with 47 arrests and $120 million in recovered funds. Sarah's body moved before her mind fully committed to the action. Her left hand found Nathan's thumb, bending it back at an angle that sent shooting pain up his arm. Her right elbow connected with his solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. As he doubled over, she pivoted, using his own momentum to flip him over her hip in a modified kataguruma that sent all 240 pounds of him crashing onto the mat. Jake Roberts reacted first, releasing her wrist to swing at her face. Sarah ducked under the punch, grabbed his extended arm, and used a textbook Aikido redirect to send him spinning into Daniel, who was already backing away. Jake's balance failed, his feet tangling with Daniel's, and both men went down in a heap of limbs and confusion. The entire sequence had taken less than 8 seconds. The dojo fell absolutely silent. Nathan lay on his back, gasping for air, his face purple with oxygen deprivation and rage. Jake was trying to untangle himself from Daniel, who had apparently decided that staying on the ground was the safest option. The 47 witnesses stood frozen, their phones still recording, capturing every detail of what would later be described in court documents as the precipitating incident. Sarah stood in the center of the mat, her breathing still controlled, her hands hanging loose at her sides. She looked up at Jennifer Hayes on the observation deck and saw something flicker across the woman's face. Not surprise or anger, but calculation. The director of wellness was already thinking 3 moves ahead, already figuring out how to spin this, how to turn it to her advantage. "I apologize for the disruption," Sarah said, loud enough for everyone to hear, maintaining her cover even now. "I reacted instinctively. It won't happen again." Nathan rolled onto his side, coughing, spitting, his eyes blazing with fury that promised retribution. But Sarah wasn't looking at him anymore. She was watching Tom Bradley, whose hand had moved to the concealed carry weapon at his hip. Former Marine, trained to assess threats, he was the real danger in the room. Their eyes met across the 20 feet of mat, and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, or professional courtesy between people who had both been trained to violence by the United States government. Tom's hand moved away from his weapon. He pulled out his phone instead, but this time Sarah noticed he wasn't recording. He was typing a message, his fingers moving with the rapid precision of someone sending a coded warning. To whom? Nathan was still on the ground. Jennifer remained on the observation deck. Who else was involved in this network? "Everyone out," Tom commanded, his military bearing suddenly evident. "Training's over for tonight." The witnesses filed toward the exit, their whispered conversations creating a buzz of speculation. Sarah heard fragments. "Did you see how fast? Nathan's never been dropped before. She's going to get fired. Did you record it? I recorded it." Within an hour, the video would be all over DataVault's internal message boards. Within 2 hours, it would leak to social media. By morning, it would be trending, and that would create its own problems for the investigation. But Sarah had protocols for that too. As the dojo emptied, leaving only Sarah, Nathan still struggling to stand, Tom by the door, and Jennifer descending from the observation deck, the real game began. Because the assault, the violence, the toxic culture, these were just symptoms. The disease ran much deeper, into financial fraud that touched every corner of DataVault's supposed wellness program. Jennifer's heels clicked against the wooden stairs as she descended. She moved like a runway model, every step calculated for maximum impact. Her business suit probably cost more than most employees made in a month, paid for with money skimmed from the very program she supervised. When she reached the main floor, she surveyed the scene with the detached interest of a scientist examining lab rats. "Nathan, get up," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made the vice president of operations scramble to his feet despite his obvious pain. "You're embarrassing yourself." Sarah watched the power dynamic shift. Nathan, who moments ago had been the alpha predator in the room, now looked like a scolded child. His shoulders hunched, his eyes downcast. This was the first crack in the facade, the first indication that the corporate hierarchy didn't match the real power structure. "She attacked me," Nathan protested, his voice hoarse from the chokehold he'd barely experienced. "Everyone saw it. She defended herself," Jennifer interrupted. "After you initiated physical contact, after you created a hostile environment that exposed the company to significant liability." She turned to Sarah, and her smile was sharp as broken glass. "Ms. Miller, I apologize for this incident. Rest assured, there will be a full investigation." The word investigation carried weight, but not the kind that would appear in any official HR report. Sarah recognized the threat beneath the professional veneer. Jennifer Hayes was already moving pieces on a chessboard that extended far beyond this dojo, far beyond Data Vault's wellness program. "I understand," Sarah replied, playing the shaken employee. I reacted. When he grabbed my throat." "Of course you did," Jennifer said, her sympathy as fake as the Rolex on her wrist. Sarah had checked, and the serial number traced back to a shipment that had been reported stolen 2 years ago. Anyone would have done the same. "Tom, please escort Ms. Miller to her car. Make sure she gets home safely." Tom Bradley stepped forward, his expression unreadable. As he guided Sarah toward the exit, she felt his hand brush against her elbow, and something small and hard pressed into her palm. She closed her fingers around it without looking, keeping her expression neutral. In the elevator, descending from the 14th floor, Tom finally spoke. "You're not who you say you are." It wasn't a question. Sarah remained silent, watching the numbers count down. 13, 12, 11. "Neither am I," Tom continued. "That thing I gave you? It's a flash drive. Everything from the last 6 months. Financial records Jennifer doesn't know I have. Recording of conversations she'd killed to keep secret." Sarah's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "Why?" "Because my daughter was one of the 23. His voice cracked slightly. "Emily Bradley. Joined the program fresh out of college, excited about her new job at Data Vault. 3 weeks later, she was in the ICU with a ruptured spleen. They said it was a training accident, made her sign an NDA in exchange for keeping her job and covering the medical bills." The elevator continued its descent. 7, 6, 5. "She killed herself 4 months later," Tom said, the words flat, emotionless, the way people speak when they've repeated something so many times it's lost its ability to wound. Left a note about the shame, the fear, the way Nathan would look at her in the hallways afterward, but mostly about how no one would believe her if she spoke up. Sarah turned to look at him directly for the first time. Tom Bradley, chief of security, Nathan's supposed ally, Jennifer's enforcer, but also a father who had spent 6 months gathering evidence, waiting for someone who could do something with it. If Tom's revelation about his daughter has you questioning how many other victims stayed silent, drop a comment below. Should Sarah trust him with her real identity, or could this be another layer of deception? The elevator doors opened onto the parking garage. Sarah's Honda Civic sat in its usual spot, deliberately unremarkable, the kind of car that blended into any parking lot in America. But as they approached it, Sarah noticed something wrong. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, though she distinctly remembered locking it. "Don't," Tom warned, his hand moving to her shoulder. His eyes scanned the garage with professional paranoia. "That's not random." He was right. Sarah could see it now. The small device attached to the undercarriage, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. A GPS tracker, but more sophisticated than civilian models, the kind that also transmitted audio, that could be remotely activated to release an electrical charge, that cost more than her monthly salary. "Jennifer?" she asked. Tom shook his head. "Nathan doesn't have access to this kind of tech. Jennifer keeps her hands clean, uses intermediaries." He paused, his expression darkening. "This is someone else. Someone who knows you're not just a data analyst." The implications hit Sarah like ice water. Her cover might be blown. 6 weeks of careful work, of building trust, of gathering evidence, might be compromised. She needed to contact Rivera, needed to assess how much of the operation was salvageable. But first, she needed to know who had marked her car. Tom pulled out his phone, activated a scanning app that shouldn't have been on a civilian device. The screen lit up with signals, the tracker on her car, but also 3 others. One in the stairwell, One by the elevator they'd just exited, and one— Tom spun around, his hand reaching for his weapon. "We're being watched," he said. "Right now." Sarah's training kicked in. She identified 3 possible observation points: the security camera that should have been disabled for maintenance, the van, parked in the handicapped spot with tinted windows, and the maintenance closet with its door cracked open just enough for a sightline. 3 watchers meant professional surveillance, meant someone had been tracking her before tonight's confrontation. "Your car's compromised," Tom said. "Take mine." He pressed a key fob into her hand. "Black Suburban, level B2, spot 47. The drive I gave you, don't look at it here. Wait until you're somewhere secure." "Why are you helping me?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Because whoever you really are, you're the first person in 18 months who's stood up to them. And because that drive contains enough evidence to bury them all, Nathan, Jennifer, and the person they both answer to." Sarah's eyes sharpened. "They have a boss?" Tom nodded grimly. "You think a VP and a wellness director could run something this big alone? The money has to go somewhere. The protection has to come from somewhere. Data Vault's corruption goes all the way to—" The gunshot was suppressed, professional, the sound barely louder than a cough in the echoing garage. Tom Bradley's eyes widened in surprise, then pain, as the red stain spread across his white shirt. He fell forward, and Sarah caught him, lowering him gently to the concrete. "The CEO!" he gasped, blood bubbling on his lips. "Robert Stone! He's washing money for—" His hand clutched at her sleeve, desperate, urgent. "The drive, patterns, 7 companies." His grip loosened, his eyes lost focus. Tom Bradley, chief of security, father of Emily, died in a parking garage beneath the building where his daughter had been destroyed. Sarah looked up, her tactical mind already calculating angles, cover, escape routes. The shooter would be repositioning, looking for a clear second shot. She had maybe 10 seconds before they had line of sight again. The flash drive in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Evidence Tom had died to deliver. She moved fast and low, using parked cars for cover, Tom's keys in her hand. Level B2, spot 47. Behind her she heard footsteps, multiple sets, coordinated movement, professional pursuit. Not mall security, not even corporate mercenaries. This was something else. The Suburban was exactly where Tom had said, already running, engine warm. He'd known, Sarah realized. He'd known he might not make it out of the garage. The driver's seat held a manila envelope with her name on it, and beneath that, a Glock 19 with 2 spare magazines. She threw the vehicle into gear and accelerated toward the exit, tires screaming against the concrete. In the rearview mirror she saw 3 figures in tactical gear emerge from the shadows, weapons raised. The rear window exploded in a shower of safety glass, but the Suburban's armored panels held. Sarah burst from the garage onto 3rd Avenue, swerving through late-night traffic. Her phone buzzed. Rivera, finally. But when she answered, it wasn't her handler's voice on the other end. "Hello, Sarah." The voice was female, cultured, familiar in a way that made Sarah's blood run cold. Or should I say, Special Agent Miller, Jennifer Hayes. Somehow she'd gotten Rivera's number, or cloned it, or the possibilities spun through Sarah's mind as she took a hard right onto Pine Street, the Suburban's tires struggling for grip. "Tom Bradley is dead," Sarah said, not bothering to maintain her cover anymore. "You killed a federal witness." Jennifer's laugh was like silk over steel. Tom Bradley died in a random act of violence. A carjacking gone wrong, very tragic. The security footage will confirm it, once our technical team finishes editing it. I have his evidence. You have a flash drive that could contain anything. Corporate espionage, perhaps. Stolen intellectual property. The kind of thing that would destroy the credibility of any witness who tried to present it. Sarah's mind raced. Jennifer was right. Without Tom to authenticate the data, without a clear chain of custody, The drive would be challenged in court. She needed something more, something that couldn't be disputed or discredited. The wire recorded everything, Sarah said. Nathan's assault, Tom's dying words, your involvement. What wire? Jennifer interrupted. The one that mysteriously malfunctioned during tonight's training session. The one that produced nothing but static for 43 minutes. Technology is so unreliable these days. Sarah's hand went to her ribs. The wire was gone. Not malfunctioning. Physically removed. During the fight, during the 8 seconds when she dropped Nathan and his 2 lieutenants, someone had gotten close enough to extract it. Daniel Carson, she realized. His hesitant grip, his positioning. He'd been reaching for the wire, not trying to restrain her. You're wondering who else is involved, Jennifer continued. Who else you can trust? Let me save you some time. No one. Every person you've interacted with at Data Vault has been evaluated, categorized, and either recruited or neutralized. Your little investigation? We've been aware of it since day one. A black sedan appeared in Sarah's mirror, gaining fast. Then another from a side street, boxing her in. Professional pursuit tactics, the kind taught at tactical driving schools, the kind that suggested her pursuers had government training. Here's what's going to happen, Jennifer said, her voice taking on the tone of a professor explaining a simple concept to a slow student. You're going to pull over. You're going to hand over Tom's drive and any other evidence you think you have. And then you're going to disappear. Not dead. We're not monsters. Just relocated. New identity. New city. Monthly payments to ensure your silence. It's really quite generous. Sarah saw the roadblock ahead. 2 more sedans positioned to funnel her into a kill box. No civilian traffic at this hour on this street. They'd chosen their ground carefully. But Sarah had spent 7 years preparing for situations exactly like this. She yanked the wheel hard left, tires screaming, and sent the Suburban crashing through the plate glass window of a closed coffee shop. The vehicle plowed through tables and chairs, emerged through the back wall into an alley that the pursuit team's planning hadn't accounted for. That was unnecessary, Jennifer said, still on the line, unperturbed. And expensive. You just added property damage to your list of crimes. Add this, Sarah replied, and threw the phone out the window. It shattered against a dumpster, taking with it any tracking capability Jennifer might have been using. The flash drive burned in her pocket. 7 companies, Tom had said. Money laundering that went beyond Data Vault, beyond even Jennifer and Nathan's corruption. She needed to get the data to someone who could act on it, someone outside the normal channels that might already be compromised. With Tom Bradley dead and Sarah on the run, who can she trust with evidence that apparently reaches into multiple corporations? The stakes just escalated beyond anything she expected. If you're ready to see how deep this conspiracy goes, make sure you've subscribed and hit that notification bell. Sarah drove through the Seattle night, her mind cataloging the pieces of the puzzle. The wellness program was a front. That much was clear. The violence, the intimidation, the systematic abuse of employees. All of it served to maintain control while money flowed through hidden channels. But money from where? And going to whom? She pulled into an abandoned warehouse in Georgetown, a place she'd scouted weeks ago as a potential safe house. The Suburban's armor had held, but the vehicle was too conspicuous now. She needed to dump it, needed to move on foot, needed to reach her backup extraction point before Jennifer's team tracked her down. Inside the warehouse, using the light from her phone, a burner she'd kept hidden in the Suburban's glove box, Sarah finally examined Tom's flash drive. Her laptop, secured in a hidden compartment she'd installed her first week at Data Vault, booted up with encryption protocols that would make the NSA proud. The files that loaded made her stomach drop. Invoice after invoice, transaction after transaction. A financial web that stretched from Data Vault to 6 other tech companies in the Pacific Northwest. But these weren't just embezzled funds or insurance fraud. The amounts were too large, the patterns too specific. This was money laundering on an industrial scale. And the source? Sinaloa, she whispered, reading the encoded references. The cartel. One of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world was using Seattle's tech industry to wash hundreds of millions in drug money. The wellness programs were perfect fronts, high costs that could be justified to boards of directors, cash-intensive operations that could absorb large deposits without raising flags, and built-in intimidation systems to keep employees from asking questions. Nathan Brennan wasn't just a corrupt executive playing dojo dictator, he was an enforcer for a cartel money laundering operation. And Jennifer Hayes wasn't just skimming funds. She was the architect of a financial system that turned blood money into clean corporate profits. A sound outside made Sarah freeze. Footsteps on gravel, multiple sets, moving in tactical formation. They'd found her faster than she'd anticipated. The warehouse had 3 exits, but thermal imaging would have shown her heat signature the moment they arrived. She was trapped. Sarah uploaded Tom's files to 3 separate secure servers, each with different authentication protocols, each set to release to different federal agencies if she didn't check in within 12 hours. Insurance, of a sort. The footsteps stopped. Then, a voice she didn't expect. Agent Miller. This is Deputy Director Margaret Miller of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I need you to come out slowly with your hands visible. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Margaret Miller. Not just sharing a last name, this was her mother, the woman she hadn't spoken to in 3 years, the woman whose shadow she'd been trying to escape her entire career. I know you're in there, Sarah, her mother continued, her voice carrying the same authority that had made her one of the most powerful people in federal law enforcement. We've been monitoring your operation from the beginning. It's time to come in. Monitoring from the beginning? The words echoed in Sarah's mind as pieces clicked into place. Her assignment to Data Vault, the surprisingly easy insertion into the company, the way certain doors had opened just when she needed them to. It hadn't been luck or skill. It had been orchestration. Sarah emerged from the warehouse, hands visible but not raised. She wasn't a criminal, and she wouldn't act like one. In the parking lot, a full FBI tactical team had established a perimeter, but the weapons were lowered, not aimed. At the center stood Margaret Miller, 62 years old but looking a decade younger, her silver hair pulled back in the same severe bun Sarah remembered from childhood. "Hello, Mother," Sarah said. "Agent Miller," Margaret corrected, maintaining professional distance even now. "You've stumbled into an operation that's been running for 18 months. We needed someone inside Data Vault who didn't know they were part of a larger investigation. Someone whose reactions would be genuine, whose cover would be perfect, because they believed it themselves. The betrayal hit harder than any physical blow. You used me as bait." "I used an asset to advance a critical investigation," Margaret replied. "The Sinaloa connection you just discovered? We've known about it for 6 months. But knowing and proving are different things. We needed someone to force their hand, to make them reveal their network." "Tom Bradley is dead," Sarah said, her voice flat. For the first time, something flickered in Margaret's expression. Regret, perhaps, or simply professional frustration at losing an asset. Tom Bradley was a complicated man. His daughter's death was real, his grief was real, but his involvement went deeper than you know. He wasn't just gathering evidence, he was being paid to look the other way. Until his conscience finally won out. Sarah processed this, adding it to the growing pattern of deception. Everyone at Data Vault had been playing multiple angles. Everyone except her. She'd been the only one operating in good faith, the only one who didn't know the full scope of the game. "The drive he gave me contains exactly what we needed," Margaret interrupted, Financial records that Jennifer Hayes thought were destroyed. Communications between Robert Stone and cartel representatives. Evidence of the murders. Murders? Sarah's voice sharpened. Plural. Margaret nodded. Emily Bradley didn't kill herself. Neither did the two other employees who supposedly committed suicide after leaving the wellness program. Nathan Brennan might play the thug, but Jennifer Hayes is the real killer. She uses a synthetic compound that mimics suicidal ideation, then stages the scenes. We've been trying to prove it for months. The scope of the horror expanded in Sarah's mind. 23 injured employees were just the visible victims. Beneath that, a murder conspiracy that turned corporate wellness into a killing field. "We need you to go back," Margaret said. "Tomorrow morning, you show up for work like nothing happened. Tom Bradley's death will be explained as a carjacking. Your confrontation with Nathan will be dismissed as a training exercise that got out of hand. Jennifer Hayes will approach you with an offer. Probably a promotion, maybe a transfer, something to keep you close while they figure out how much you know." Sarah shook her head. "They know I'm federal. Jennifer called me Special Agent Miller. She was fishing, testing to see how you'd react. Your cover held because you didn't confirm or deny." Margaret pulled out a tablet, showed Sarah a surveillance photo. "This was taken an hour ago. Jennifer Hayes meeting with Robert Stone and someone else. Someone we've been trying to identify for 2 years." The third person in the photo made Sarah's breath catch. She recognized him from briefings at Quantico, from wanted posters in federal buildings, from nightmares that haunted every agent who worked organized crime. Miguel Delgado. The Sinaloa cartel's head of North American operations, Margaret confirmed. He's in Seattle, personally overseeing something that's happening in the next 72 hours. Something big enough to bring him out of hiding. Sarah understood now. The 72-hour countdown she'd been tracking wasn't about the SEC filing. It was about something much larger. A massive money transfer, perhaps, or a shipment of drugs large enough to supply the entire West Coast. "You want me to be bait again," Sarah said. "I want you to finish what you started," Margaret replied, "but this time with full tactical support. We have teams positioned throughout the city. The moment Delgado makes his move, we take down the entire network. 7 companies, 43 conspirators, and one of the most wanted men in the world." Sarah considered her options. She could walk away, demand extraction, let someone else finish the operation. But Tom Bradley's blood was still on her clothes. Emily Bradley and the others deserved justice. And despite everything, despite the manipulation and lies, the mission remained the same. Stop the corruption, save the innocent, bring down the guilty. What about Nathan and Jennifer? Nathan Brennan is small-time, a useful idiot who thinks he's a player. Jennifer Hayes is more dangerous, but she's also more valuable. We want her alive, able to testify. Margaret paused. "Can you do that? Can you go back into that building knowing what you know?" Sarah thought about the dojo, about Nathan's hands on her throat, about the 47 witnesses who'd watched her fight back. She thought about the systematic destruction of innocent employees, about Tom Bradley dying in a parking garage, about money soaked in blood flowing through corporate accounts. "I can do it, but on my terms. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. I get full operational awareness, or I walk right now." Margaret studied her daughter for a long moment, perhaps seeing something of herself in Sarah's determination. Agreed. Full disclosure from this point forward. "And one more thing," Sarah added. "When this is over, I'm done. No more operations, no more undercover work. I want out." "That's a discussion for another time." "No," Sarah interrupted. "It's a condition for right now. This is my last mission. Promise me that, or find another asset." The standoff lasted 10 seconds, mother and daughter locked in a battle of wills that had been brewing for decades. Finally, Margaret nodded. "Your last mission," she agreed. "Make it count." Sarah returned to her apartment at 3:47 a.m., exhausted but wired with adrenaline. The place had been searched, professionally, carefully, but she could tell. A picture frame slightly askew, a drawer not quite closed. The sugar container in her kitchen moved half an inch from its usual position. They'd been looking for something. Probably the flash drive, now safely in FBI custody. She showered, washing away Tom Bradley's blood and the grime of pursuit. In the mirror, she examined the bruises forming on her throat from Nathan's attempted chokehold. They'd be perfect for maintaining her cover. Visible evidence of the attack that would make her seem like a victim rather than a threat. Her secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Rivera, her real handler, not the compromised line Jennifer had called earlier. Package received. Analysis confirming Tom's data. Your mother wants you to know. Daniel Carson is ours. Daniel Carson. The hesitant one who'd grabbed her right arm during the assault. He wasn't a coerced participant. He was another undercover asset, placed to monitor Jake Roberts and provide backup if Sarah's cover was blown. The layers of deception ran so deep that even the players didn't know who was on which side. Sarah walked into Data Vault at 8:15 a.m., her throat wrapped in a silk scarf that didn't quite hide the bruises. The lobby security guard, usually chatty, avoided eye contact. Word had spread overnight. Every employee knew about the confrontation in the dojo, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. The elevator ride to the third floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, the entire data analytics department fell silent. 32 people pretending to work while actually watching Sarah make her way to her cubicle. She'd become something between a hero and a pariah, the woman who'd stood up to Nathan Brennan, but would probably be gone by lunch. Her computer booted normally. No termination notice, no locked accounts. In fact, there was a calendar invitation waiting. A 10 a.m. meeting with Jennifer Hayes in the executive conference room. The subject line read simply, Opportunity Discussion. Sarah accepted the invitation and spent the next 90 minutes maintaining her cover, running analytics reports on customer engagement metrics while her mind processed the real data. The patterns Tom Bradley had died to reveal. 7 companies, all tech firms, all with expensive wellness programs, all showing similar financial anomalies in their quarterly reports. The money laundering operation was hiding in plain sight, disguised as employee benefits. At 9:58, she stood and walked to the elevator. Daniel Carson was already inside when the doors opened, and their eyes met for a fraction of a second. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Backup was in position. The FBI had people throughout the building, employees who'd been placed over months, all waiting for the signal to move. The executive conference room occupied a corner of the 20th floor, with views of both Elliott Bay and Mount Rainier on clear days. Today, clouds pressed low over Seattle, turning the world gray and oppressive. Jennifer Hayes sat at the far end of the polished table, flanked by 2 men Sarah didn't recognize. Corporate lawyers, judging by their expensive suits and predatory expressions. Sarah, please sit, Jennifer said, gesturing to a chair that would put Sarah's back to the door. Basic power play. Basic intimidation tactic. Sarah took a different seat, one that gave her sight lines to both exits and kept the windows at her back. Jennifer's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. I'll be direct, Jennifer began. Last night's incident was unfortunate. Nathan Brennan has been suspended pending an investigation into his conduct. We take employee safety very seriously at Data Vault. Tom Bradley is dead, Sarah said flatly, watching for reactions. Jennifer's expression shifted to practiced sorrow. Yes, we heard about the carjacking. Tragic. Tom was a valued member of our team. His family will receive full benefits, of course. One of the lawyers slid a document across the table. This is a settlement agreement, he said. In exchange for not pursuing any action related to last night's incident, Data Vault is prepared to offer you a significant compensation package. Sarah glanced at the number. $500,000. $500,000 to forget that your VP of Operations assaulted me? To move forward, Jennifer corrected, along with a promotion to Senior Data Analyst and a 40% raise. You'd report directly to me, work on special projects that require someone with your particular skills. The offer was too good, suspiciously good. They were either trying to buy her silence or keep her close enough to monitor. Probably both. What kind of special projects? Sarah asked. Jennifer leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the table. You have a talent for seeing patterns, for understanding how data flows through systems. We're implementing new financial tracking across our wellness initiatives, not just here, but at partner companies. We need someone who can ensure everything runs smoothly. Partner companies. The other 6 firms in the money laundering network. Jennifer was offering Sarah a front-row seat to the entire operation, probably hoping to compromise her, to make her complicit in crimes she couldn't later report. I need time to consider this, Sarah said. Of course. Take the day. But Sarah... Jennifer's voice dropped, becoming almost intimate. Opportunities like this don't come often. The people we're working with value loyalty above all else. Once you're in, you're family. But if you're out... She let the threat hang unspoken. Sarah stood to leave, but Jennifer's next words stopped her. Your mother called this morning. Sarah's blood chilled. She turned slowly. My mother? Margaret Miller, Deputy Director at the FBI. Quite impressive, having a parent in such a position. Jennifer's smile was sharp as a blade. She wanted to make sure you were all right after last night's incident. So concerned. I assured her you were fine, that we were taking excellent care of you. The message was clear. We know who you are, we know who protects you, and we can reach anyone. If Jennifer's threat about Sarah's mother has you worried about how deep this conspiracy goes, leave a comment with your theory about who's really pulling the strings. Is Jennifer the mastermind? Or is there another layer we haven't seen yet? Sarah left the conference room with the settlement document, her mind racing. Jennifer had contacted Margaret directly, which meant either the operation was more compromised than anyone realized, or this was part of the game within the game that her mother was playing. With Margaret, it was impossible to tell. Back at her desk, Sarah found a USB drive placed precisely in the center of her keyboard. No one was looking at her, but she could feel the weight of observation. She plugged it into her laptop, knowing it was probably loaded with malware, but needing to see what message it contained. A single video file. She clicked play. The footage was grainy, clearly from a security camera, but the content was clear enough. Tom Bradley, alive, meeting with a man whose face was digitally obscured. They were exchanging something. Money? Documents? The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago, long before Tom had approached Sarah with his supposed evidence. Then the audio kicked in, Tom's voice clear. The FBI agent doesn't suspect anything. She's focused on Brennan and the wellness program. She has no idea about the real operation. Sarah's stomach dropped. The video continued, Tom explaining how he was feeding Sarah controlled information, keeping her investigation contained to Data Vault, while the real crime, the massive cartel money laundering operation, proceeded untouched. The video ended with a message in plain text. Trust no one. Conference Room B, Level 5, 2 p.m. Come alone. Level 5 was the building's data center, a restricted floor that required special authorization to access. Conference Room B didn't exist on any official floor plan, but Sarah had noticed it during her reconnaissance, a room that appeared on old blueprints, but had supposedly been converted to server space years ago. She had 3 hours to decide. This could be a trap, an attempt to isolate and eliminate her. Or it could be someone trying to help, someone else caught in the web of deception who wanted out. The smart move would be to inform Rivera, to bring backup. but the video of Tom had shaken her confidence. If Tom had been playing her, who else was compromised? At 1:45, Sarah made her decision. She took the elevator to level 5, using an access card she'd cloned her second week at Data Vault. The data center hummed with the white noise of 1,000 servers. The temperature kept at a precise 62 degrees. She followed the maze of server racks to the back corner, where a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only" led to what the current floor plans called Storage Room 5B. She pushed open the door and found herself in a conference room that shouldn't exist, facing the last person she expected to see. Robert Stone, CEO of Data Vault, sat at a dusty conference table, looking nothing like the confident executive who graced the company's annual reports. His usual $3,000 suit was replaced with jeans and a wrinkled shirt. His hands shook slightly as he poured whiskey from a flask into a paper cup. "Agent Miller," he said without looking up. "Or do you prefer Sarah?" Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward the concealed weapon at her ankle. "Mr. Stone, sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, we don't have much time." Against her better judgment, Sarah sat, keeping her hands visible but ready. Stone looked like he hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and a nervous tick pulled at the corner of his mouth. "They killed Tom because he was going to tell you the truth," Stone said. "The real truth, not the version Jennifer and Nathan want you to believe. You had Tom Bradley murdered?" "No!" Stone's response was explosive, desperate. "I tried to protect him. I've been trying to protect everyone, but I'm in too deep. They have my daughter." Sarah processed this new information. Robert Stone had a daughter, Rebecca, 24, working at a non-profit in Portland. At least, that's what the official records showed. "The cartel has Rebecca?" Stone nodded, pulling out his phone to show Sarah a picture. A young woman, bound to a chair, holding today's newspaper. Proof of life, but also proof of captivity. "2 years ago, I made a mistake," Stone continued. "Data Vault was struggling. We'd overextended on R&D, burned through our reserves. A friend introduced me to investors who could solve our problems. I didn't ask enough questions about where the money came from." The classic story. A desperate executive making a deal with devils, only to discover the price was his soul. By the time I realized we were washing cartel money, it was too late. They had their hooks in everything. Jennifer Hayes isn't middle management. She's Delgado's personal representative. Nathan thinks he's her muscle, but he's just another puppet. The real enforcement comes from people you never see, people embedded throughout the company. "Why tell me this now?" Sarah asked. "Because in 48 hours they're moving the entire operation. 7 companies worth of cleaned money, almost $2 billion, transferred to accounts that will disappear into the legitimate economy forever. And once that happens, everyone who knows about it becomes a liability." Stone pulled out a flash drive, different from the one Tom had given her. "This contains the real books. Not just Data Vault, but all 7 companies. Account numbers, transfer protocols, the names of every person involved." Sarah took the drive carefully. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," Stone admitted. "But you can verify everything on that drive, and you can save my daughter. The FBI raids tomorrow, right? The big takedown your mother has been planning." Sarah kept her expression neutral, neither confirming nor denying. Stone laughed bitterly. "Of course I know. Jennifer knows too. That's why they're accelerating the timeline. The transfer happens tonight, 6 hours before your mother expects it. By tomorrow morning, the money will be gone. The key players will be in Mexico, and people like me will be left holding empty bags and probably bullets. What do you want from me?" "Get Rebecca out," Stone pleaded. "She's being held at a warehouse in Georgetown, 4847 Industrial Way, 6 guards, rotating in 8-hour shifts. The FBI could extract her during the raids, Make it look like part of the larger operation. Sarah stood, pocketing the drive. If this is a trap—
It's not, Stone interrupted.
I'm a coward and a fool, but I'm not a killer. Everything I did was to save my company, then to save my daughter. I'll go to prison for my crimes, I accept that. But Rebecca doesn't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Sarah left the hidden conference room with more questions than answers. 2 flash drives now, each containing different versions of the truth. Tom's showing one pattern, Stone's showing another. Both could be authentic, both could be fabricated, or the truth could be somewhere in between. She returned to her desk to find Nathan Brennan standing beside it, very much not suspended as Jennifer had claimed. His throat showed bruises that matched her own, but his eyes held something worse than anger. Anticipation. "Wellness Center! Now!" he said, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. "I have work to—" "Now!" he repeated, and this time Sarah noticed the bulge beneath his jacket. Armed, in the middle of a corporate office, in broad daylight. Whatever was happening, the pretense of normalcy was crumbling. She followed him to the elevator, aware of Daniel Carson falling into step behind them. Inside, Nathan pressed the button for the 14th floor. But as the doors closed, he also entered a code on his phone. The elevator bypassed the 14th floor, continuing up to one that wasn't supposed to exist. Level 23, above even the executive suites. The doors opened onto a space that looked more like a military command center than corporate offices. Monitors covered the walls, showing feeds from every corner of the building, from streets around Seattle, from locations Sarah recognized as the other 6 companies in the network. People she'd never seen before worked at stations, speaking into headsets in a mixture of English and Spanish. Jennifer Hayes stood at the center, no longer playing the corporate executive. She wore tactical gear, a sidearm visible on her hip, and her entire demeanor had shifted from boardroom predator to battlefield commander. "Welcome to the real data vault," she said. "Or should I say, welcome to Hydra Station, the Pacific Northwest hub for the Sinaloa cartel's North American operations." Sarah's mind reeled. The entire building, not just the wellness program, not just the financial department, but the entire building was a front. "Every employee?" Sarah asked. "No, most are legitimate. They provide cover, create real revenue streams, maintain the illusion. But the core, the people who matter, all work for Delgado." Jennifer gestured to the monitors. "We coordinate distribution for 6 states from this room. We wash money through 7 companies from this room. We've been operating for 3 years, right under the FBI's nose." "My mother knows," Sarah said, though she wasn't certain of anything anymore. Jennifer smiled. "Your mother knows what we want her to know. She thinks the raid tomorrow will be a triumph. 43 arrests, headlines about breaking up a cartel money laundering ring. She'll be a hero. Meanwhile, the real operation continues elsewhere, stronger for having shed its compromised elements. The strategy was brilliant in its ruthlessness. Sacrifice the pawns to save the kingdom. Let the FBI have their victory while the real victory belonged to the cartel. You're all expendable, Sarah realized. Even you. Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. We all serve our roles. Some of us are just more valuable than others. A new voice cut through the room, speaking accented English. Enough games. Miguel Delgado emerged from a side office, and Sarah's breath caught. One of the most wanted men in the world, responsible for thousands of deaths, billions in drug trafficking, walking freely through a Seattle tech company. He was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 5'8", with silver hair and an unremarkable face that could disappear into any crowd. But his eyes were those of a man who'd ordered massacres over breakfast and slept soundly afterward. Agent Miller, he said conversationally, your reputation precedes you. The woman who brought down the Torino family in Philadelphia. Very impressive. Sarah hadn't used her real name in that operation. The fact that Delgado knew meant the cartel had sources deep inside federal law enforcement. "I have a proposition," Delgado continued. "Your mother thinks she's running you, but we both know you're tired of being her puppet. Work for us instead. Your skills, our resources. You could be wealthy beyond imagination." "I've seen what your money costs," Sarah replied steadily. Delgado shrugged. "Everything costs something. The question is whether you're buying or being sold." He pulled out a phone, showed her a video feed. "Your mother is having lunch at Dimitri's on Pine Street. Alone, as she always does on Thursdays. Table by the window, Caesar salad, iced tea." The threat was implicit but clear. They could reach Margaret Miller whenever they wanted. The cartel just threatened Sarah's mother while revealing the entire building is a front operation. With both family and country at stake, what choice would you make in Sarah's position? Comment your strategy below. "You have 1 hour to decide," Delgado said. "Accept our offer, or watch everyone you care about suffer for your stubbornness." Nathan here is particularly eager to continue your training session from last night. Nathan cracked his knuckles theatrically, but Sarah noticed something else. His eyes flickered toward one of the monitors, then to his watch. A tell, small but significant. 1 hour, Sarah agreed. "I need to think." Delgado nodded to Jennifer, who gestured for Nathan to escort Sarah out. But instead of the elevator, Nathan led her to a different room, an office with windows facing the street. He closed the door behind them, and his entire demeanor changed. "We have maybe 3 minutes before they wonder why I brought you here," he said rapidly. "I'm DEA. Deep cover for 4 years. The raid needs to happen now, not tomorrow." Sarah's world tilted again. Nathan Brennan, the sadistic VP who'd terrorized employees, was federal law enforcement. "Prove it," she demanded. He rattled off a badge number, a handler's name. Details only a real agent would know. "I've been maintaining my cover by being the worst version of myself. Every person I hurt, every employee I terrorized. It kills me, but it kept me alive and in position. Tonight, Delgado moves the money and disappears. Your mother's timeline is blown. Why didn't you reach out sooner? Because I didn't know who you really were until last night. Your takedown technique, that's FBI defensive tactics, but you modified it with something else. Military, maybe. Only someone with your specific training combination would have made that adjustment." Nathan moved to the window, pointing at a building across the street. "See that office? 3rd floor, corner unit? That's where the real servers are. Everything in this building is for show. The actual financial processing happens over there, in what looks like an accounting firm." Sarah processed this rapidly. "The FBI is about to raid the wrong building." "Exactly. Delgado will sacrifice this entire operation. Let the FBI arrest 40 people who know nothing real, while the actual infrastructure remains intact." Nathan checked his watch again. 58 hours is wrong, too. The transfer happens in 58 minutes. "My mother doesn't know. Delgado has someone in her inner circle feeding him information, keeping her focused on the wrong timeline." Nathan pulled out a phone Sarah hadn't seen before. "This is my real handler. 1 call and we can have DEA teams here in 20 minutes. But we need the FBI too, or Delgado slips away." Sarah made her decision. She pulled out her secure phone and typed a message to Rivera. "Critical. Real target is 1847 4th Avenue, not data vault. Transfer in 57 minutes. Nathan Brennan is DEA. Move now." The response came 15 seconds later. "Confirmed. Teams redirecting. Your mother wants to know how you knew." Sarah looked at Nathan. "Because I finally learned to stop trusting what I'm told and start trusting what I see." They had less than an hour to coordinate one of the most complex raids in federal history. Nathan provided the DEA intelligence, while Sarah fed information to the FBI. The two agencies, famous for their rivalry, would have to work in perfect synchronization. "There's something else," Nathan said. "Jennifer Hayes. She's not who you think." Before he could elaborate, the door burst open. Jennifer stood there, weapon drawn, aimed at Nathan's head. "DEA," she said simply. "I've known for 6 months. Did you really think your pathetic act fooled me?" Nathan moved to draw his weapon, but Jennifer fired. The suppressed shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Blood spread across his white shirt, pooling on the executive carpet. "Men," Jennifer said dismissively. "Always underestimating women." She turned the gun on Sarah. "Your turn to choose. Are you going to be smart, or do I need to put you down like your friend here?" Sarah knelt beside Nathan, pressing her hands against his wound. He was losing blood fast, needed medical attention immediately. "Let me help him," Sarah pleaded, playing for time. "Help?" Jennifer laughed. "You want to help? Then make the call. Tell your mother the intelligence was wrong. Tell her to stick to the original timeline." Sarah looked up at Jennifer, then at the monitors showing the cartel's operation, then at Nathan bleeding out on the floor. 42 minutes until the transfer. Federal teams were already moving based on her message. The entire operation balanced on a knife's edge. "No," Sarah said simply. Jennifer's finger tightened on the trigger, but before she could fire, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. Alarms began blaring. On the monitors, Sarah could see federal vehicles surrounding both buildings, agents in tactical gear taking positions. 30 minutes early, Jennifer said with grudging admiration. Your mother does like her surprises. But it wasn't Margaret Miller's surprise. On Sarah's phone, a message from Daniel Carson appeared. Infrastructure compromised. Their entire system is locked. The transfer can't happen. Get out now. Daniel hadn't just been backup. He'd been cyber warfare, infiltrating the cartel's financial systems, creating a digital trap that would freeze their assets the moment they tried to move them. Jennifer saw it too. Saw her empire crumbling on the monitors as federal agents breached both buildings simultaneously. Her expression shifted from anger to calculation, to something like resignation. "You know what?" she said, lowering her weapon. "Prison might be preferable to what Delgado would do to me for losing $2 billion. She set the gun on the desk and raised her hands. "I want to make a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for witness protection. I can give you Delgado's entire network, not just here but globally." Sarah kept pressure on Nathan's wound while processing this. Jennifer Hayes, the architect of murder and money laundering, wanted to flip. "That's not my call," Sarah said. "Then make the call to someone who can decide," Jennifer said urgently. "Delgado has a protocol for situations like this. In about 10 minutes, cleanup teams will arrive. They'll kill everyone who knows anything, then disappear. Your federal raid will find nothing but bodies." Sarah made the call, keeping it on speaker so Jennifer could hear. Margaret Miller answered immediately. "Sarah, are you secure?" "Relatively. Jennifer Hayes wants to deal. Full cooperation for protection." There was a pause. "Put her on." Jennifer took the phone. "Deputy Director Miller, I have information on 17 cartel operations across 6 countries. I have names, dates, financial records, everything. But my offer expires the moment Delgado's cleanup teams arrive." "Accepted," Margaret said without hesitation. "Agent Miller, secure Ms. Hayes and get Agent Brennan medical attention. Tactical teams are 90 seconds out. With Jennifer flipped and Nathan revealed as DEA, the entire game board just changed. But Delgado is still free and cleanup teams are coming. Can Sarah and the federal agents wrap this up before more blood is spilled?" The next few minutes unfolded in controlled chaos. Federal agents flooded both buildings. Nathan was evacuated by medical teams, still conscious but barely. Jennifer was taken into protective custody, already dictating names and locations to federal prosecutors. But Miguel Delgado was nowhere to be found. Sarah stood in the command center, now swarming with FBI and DEA agents, studying the monitors. Something was wrong. The raid was too easy. The victory too clean. Delgado didn't build an empire by giving up when things went bad. Then she saw it. A feed from the parking garage showing Robert Stone being forced into a van. Not federal agents, but Delgado's men. The CEO had been telling the truth about his daughter. And now Delgado was collecting all his remaining assets. Sarah ran for the stairwell, taking them 3 at a time, burst into the garage just as the van was pulling away. She memorized the license plate, then called it into the federal teams. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "You cost me $2 billion. Delgado's voice was calm, almost amused. "But money can be replaced. Reputation, however, requires a response." "It's over, Delgado. Jennifer is cooperating. We have everything." "You have what I'm leaving behind. Old infrastructure, burned assets. I'll rebuild within 6 months. But you, Agent Miller, you've made this personal. By doing my job? By being good at it." There was genuine respect in his voice. "In another life, you would have been valuable to my organization. Instead, you're a problem that needs solving."
Come after me, Sarah challenged.
"See how that works out." Delgado laughed. "Not you. You're a federal agent. Too much heat. But Rebecca Stone? Robert's daughter? She's nobody. And her father betrayed me by talking to you." The line went dead. Sarah immediately called the tactical teams, gave them the warehouse address Stone had provided. But even as federal vehicles raced toward Georgetown, she knew they'd be too late. Delgado didn't make empty threats. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in an empty warehouse. No guards, no hostage, just a photo left on a chair. Rebecca Stone, alive but terrified, holding a Mexican newspaper. She'd already been moved across the border. Robert Stone collapsed when he heard, all his corporate bearing crumbling into a father's grief. "I tried to save her," he kept repeating. "I tried to do the right thing." The raid's final tally was impressive. 47 arrests, $1.3 billion in frozen assets. Enough evidence to dismantle a major money laundering network. The media called it a triumph. Margaret Miller gave press conferences about interagency cooperation and the dedication of federal law enforcement. But Sarah stood in the empty dojo on the 14th floor of Data Vault, looking at the mats where this had all started, and felt only hollow victory. Rebecca Stone was still missing. Miguel Delgado was still free. And Tom Bradley was still dead. Whether hero or traitor, she'd never really know. Nathan Brennan, Agent Nathan Mitchell, she'd learned, survived his wound. 3 days later, Sarah visited him in the hospital. 4 years undercover, he said, his voice rough. 4 years of being a monster to maintain my cover. Do you know what that does to a person? You saved lives, Sarah offered, and destroyed others. Those 23 employees I hurt, they weren't collateral damage. They were real people with real pain. He looked out the window. Jennifer was right about one thing. We all underestimated her. She's cut a deal, full immunity in exchange for her cooperation. Nathan laughed bitterly. She orchestrated murders and gets immunity. I maintained a cover and have nightmares. Justice is a funny thing, isn't it? Sarah didn't have an answer for that. Justice was indeed a funny thing, especially in her world where the lines between right and wrong blurred into shades of gray. A week later, Sarah sat across from her mother in a restaurant. Not Dimitri's, somewhere new, somewhere Delgado's people hadn't surveilled. Margaret Miller looked tired, older somehow, despite the operation's success. You did well, Margaret said, the closest she ever came to praise. I was bait, Sarah replied. From the beginning, I was bait. You were an asset deployed effectively. The distinction matters. Does it? Tom Bradley died thinking he was doing the right thing. Robert Stone lost his daughter trying to save her. Nathan Mitchell lost his soul maintaining his cover. What did we really win? Margaret set down her coffee cup, studied her daughter. We won time. Delgado will rebuild, yes, but we've set him back years. We've saved lives that would have been lost to drugs that won't hit the streets. We've shown that even the cartels can't operate with impunity. And the cost? There's always a cost. Margaret's expression softened slightly. You said this was your last operation. It is. What will you do? Sarah pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. Her resignation from the FBI, effective immediately. I'm going to find Rebecca Stone, she said simply. Not as a federal agent, not as part of any operation. Just someone trying to save one person because it's the right thing to do. Margaret read the resignation, then looked up. That's not how the world works, Sarah. Individual actions don't change systems. Maybe not, but they change individual lives. And right now that's enough for me. Sarah stood to leave, then paused. The wellness program at Data Vault. After all this, they're starting it fresh. Real instructors, real training, no hidden agendas. The woman they hired to run it is named Emily Patterson. She's former Army, lost her sister to cartel violence, wants to help people defend themselves. Why are you telling me this? Because sometimes good things grow from poisoned ground, and because I wanted you to know that despite everything, something positive came from this. Margaret nodded slowly. Be careful, Sarah. Delgado has a long memory. So do I. Sarah walked out of the restaurant, out of her mother's shadow, out of the life she'd known. The rain had started again, Seattle's perpetual drizzle that washed the streets clean, but never quite removed the underlying grime. She had no badge now, no backup, no federal resources. Just determination and a promise to a broken father that she'd bring his daughter home. The investigation into Data Vault would continue for months. Jennifer Hayes would testify in closed sessions, revealing cartel operations across the globe. Nathan Mitchell would receive commendations and medical retirement, his body and spirit too damaged to continue fieldwork. Daniel Carson would disappear into another operation, another identity, another fight against the endless tide of crime. But Sarah Miller's story as a federal agent ended where it began. In a dojo where violence had been disguised as wellness, where corruption had worn corporate clothing, where she'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who smile while they destroy you. 3 months later, a news report from Juarez. American woman Rebecca Stone rescued in joint operation between Mexican authorities and independent security contractors. Details remain classified, but sources suggest a private operator with significant tactical experience led the extraction. The report didn't mention the operator's name. It didn't need to. In Seattle, Data Vault Corporation restructured, rebuilt, rebranded. The Wellness Center became a real benefit for employees, a place where people could learn actual self-defense from qualified instructors. The 14th floor, once a kingdom of fear, transformed into something useful, something good. Emily Patterson, the new wellness director, kept a photo on her desk. Not of her sister lost to cartel violence, but of an unnamed woman who'd sent her a simple note. Make it mean something. Miguel Delgado remains free, his empire wounded but not destroyed. The 7 companies involved in the money laundering have all filed for bankruptcy or restructuring. 47 people await trial. Jennifer Hayes lives in an undisclosed location, her testimony slowly unraveling decades of cartel operations. And somewhere, perhaps in a small town in Mexico, perhaps in a safe house in Texas, perhaps in a place that doesn't officially exist, Sarah Miller continues her work. Not as a federal agent, not as someone's daughter or someone's asset, but as herself. Someone who understands that justice isn't always about the big victories. Sometimes it's about 8 seconds of decisive action. Sometimes it's about standing up when everyone else kneels. Sometimes it's about refusing to be silent when silence would be easier. The dojo at Data Vault still has the same mats, professionally cleaned but carrying invisible history. New employees train there, learning legitimate techniques from legitimate instructors. They don't know about the blood that was spilled, the lives that were broken, the empire that was exposed. But occasionally, very occasionally, someone will execute a perfect kata guruma, the technique that turns an opponent's strength against them. And Emily Patterson will nod approvingly and say, "Good, but remember, technique is just the beginning. The real victory is knowing when and why to use it." The students think she's talking about martial arts. She's not. In her final report, filed before her resignation, Sarah Miller wrote, "Corruption is not a disease that can be cured, but a chronic condition that must be constantly managed. We won this battle, but the war continues. The wellness program was a front, but it was also a mirror, showing us how easily legitimate institutions can be corrupted, how quickly good people can be turned into victims or villains." The 8 seconds it took to drop Nathan Brennan and his accomplices were not about physical superiority. They were about preparation, training, and the willingness to act when action is required. Every employee at Data Vault who suffered in silence, every person who looked away, enabled the system to continue. It took outsiders, federal agents, undercover operatives, people willing to sacrifice their covers and careers to break the cycle. My recommendation: regular audits of all corporate wellness programs, especially those with unusual funding structures or high employee turnover. The patterns are visible if we're willing to look. Tom Bradley saw them and died trying to expose them. Robert Stone saw them and lost his daughter trying to correct them. We cannot let their sacrifices be meaningless. This is Special Agent Sarah Miller, badge number 4782, signing off for the final time. The report was classified, filed away in federal archives where few would ever read it, but its lessons lived on in training programs, in operational protocols, in the whispered warnings between agents. Watch the wellness programs, watch the money, watch the patterns. And always be ready for those 8 seconds when everything changes. Years from now, when the story of Data Vault is reduced to a case study in federal training manuals, the details will be sanitized. The blood will be statistics. The victims will be numbers. The corruption will be flowcharts and financial diagrams. But those who were there will remember differently. They'll remember Sarah Miller, the quiet data analyst who refused to stay quiet. They'll remember the moment she stood in the center of that dojo, surrounded by corruption and violence, and chose to fight back. They'll remember that sometimes justice doesn't come from courtrooms or federal raids. Sometimes it comes from one person saying no when everyone expects them to say yes. Sometimes it comes from 8 seconds of decisive action. Sometimes it comes from the quiet ones who finally find their voice. And in a small apartment in an undisclosed location, Sarah Miller trains every morning, not for fitness, not for wellness, but for readiness. Because she knows Miguel Delgado remembers. She knows the cartel never forgets. And she knows that somewhere, sometime, there will be another 8 seconds that define everything. When that moment comes, she'll be ready. She always is. The quiet ones always are. 2 years passed. The headlines faded. The trials concluded. Data Vault became a case study in business schools. How corruption can hollow out a company from within. How wellness programs can become weapons. How 8 seconds of resistance can topple empires. But in Guadalajara, Mexico, in a compound surrounded by armed guards and surveillance cameras, Miguel Delgado read a different kind of report. His intelligence network, wounded but not destroyed, had tracked Sarah Miller's movements for 24 months. The former agent had kept her promise. She'd gone after Rebecca Stone with the methodical patience of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove.
"She's getting close," his lieutenant reported.
"Our sources say she's identified the safe house. She's been recruiting local assets, people who lost family to our operations." Delgado set down the report, looked out at the mountains surrounding his estate. "Let her come." "Sir?" "A lesson needs to be taught. Not to her, she's beyond teaching, but to everyone watching. Let them see what happens when one person thinks they can fight the machine." What Delgado didn't know, what his intelligence network had failed to detect, was that Sarah Miller wasn't alone. In those 2 years, she'd built something unprecedented. A coalition of the damaged, the discarded, the ones the system had failed. Former agents like Nathan Mitchell, who'd found purpose beyond their broken covers. Parents like Robert Stone, whose wealth now funded a very different kind of operation. Even Jennifer Hayes, from her witness protection, fed intelligence through encrypted channels, playing all sides as she always had. They called themselves Nothing. They had no name, no official structure, no government backing. Just a shared understanding that sometimes the system wasn't enough. That sometimes justice required people willing to work in the spaces between legal and illegal, between right and necessary. The rescue of Rebecca Stone happened on a Tuesday morning at 4:17 a.m. No explosions, no dramatic firefights, just precise execution of a plan 2 years in the making. Sarah had learned from her time at Data Vault. The most effective operations were the ones nobody saw coming. Rebecca was extracted while Delgado slept, his guards neutralized with a synthetic compound Jennifer Hayes had provided. The same one she'd once used to simulate suicides, now repurposed to create temporary paralysis. By the time the cartel realized what had happened, Rebecca was already across the border, reunited with her father, beginning the long journey back from 2 years of captivity. But Sarah didn't leave Mexico immediately. She left something behind in Delgado's compound, a simple envelope on his desk, containing a single photograph. It showed Delgado's own daughter, Maria, at her university in Spain, walking to class, unaware of the photographer. On the back, Sarah had written, "She's beautiful, smart, innocent. I could have taken her like you took Rebecca. I didn't. That's the difference between us." The message was clear. Sarah Miller could reach anyone, anywhere, but chose not to. She operated by rules Delgado would never understand. Rules that made her more dangerous than any cartel enforcer, because they made her unpredictable to men who understood only violence and money. Delgado burned the photograph, but the damage was done. For the first time in his life, he felt vulnerable. Not physically, he'd always known death might come, but vulnerable in his assumptions about power, about control, about what one person could accomplish when they stopped playing by anyone's rules but their own. Back in Seattle, Margaret Miller received a package with no return address. Inside was a copy of Sarah's operational report from the Rebecca Stone extraction. Detailed, professional, the kind of document Sarah had once filed with the FBI. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "The quiet ones are never really quiet. They're just choosing when to speak. This was my choice. This was my voice." Margaret understood. Her daughter had found her own way of serving justice, outside the system that had shaped them both. She filed the report in a personal safe, not in any official record. Some victories belonged to the shadows. Emily Patterson still ran the wellness program at Data Vault, now genuinely helping employees learn self-defense. But she'd added something to the curriculum, a session on recognizing institutional corruption, on understanding when workplace behavior crossed into abuse, on finding the courage to speak up before 8 seconds of violence became necessary. She never mentioned Sarah Miller by name, but every class heard the same message. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest or the strongest. It's the quiet one, who's been watching, learning, preparing.
Be aware of them. More importantly, be one of them. Not to hurt others, but to be ready when others try to hurt you or those you protect. The dojo's mirrors reflected countless faces over the months. New employees, survivors of the old regime, people seeking strength or just exercise. But sometimes, very rarely, Emily would see something in someone's eyes, a recognition, an understanding that went beyond physical training. These were the ones who stayed after class, who asked deeper questions, who understood that self-defense wasn't just about the body. To them, she would sometimes say, "Real strength isn't in the fist. It's in knowing when to make it, when to open it, and when to extend it to help someone else stand." One evening, as Seattle's rain painted the windows and the city lights blurred into watercolors below, Emily found a note slipped under her office door. No signature, just 4 words. "You made it mean something." She knew who it was from. She knew Sarah Miller was still out there, still working, still fighting battles that would never make headlines. And she knew that in dojos and offices and hidden rooms around the world, other quiet ones were preparing, watching, waiting for their 8 seconds. Because that's what the corrupt never understand. The quiet ones aren't passive. They're patient. They're not weak. They're waiting. And when the moment comes, when injustice becomes unbearable, when the system fails those it's meant to protect, they act with a precision that comes from years of observation, preparation, and controlled fury. The data vault scandal had ended, officially. The trials were over. The guilty were imprisoned or fled. The money was recovered or lost forever. But its real legacy lived in the people it had awakened. The quiet ones who'd learned that sometimes standing up meant standing alone, and that 8 seconds of decisive action could echo for years. In the end, Sarah Miller had been right. The quiet ones always are. Ready.
You are not alone. Someone wants to hear you. Share your story. Thank you for watching to the end. Please like and subscribe to Stereo.